I am so grateful to all of our speakers for their generosity in joining us tonight with their expertise. And I want to begin by introducing Ryan Anderson, who will be facilitating our conversation. Ryan is president of the Ethics and Public Policy Center and founding editor of the Witherspoon Institute's online journal, Public Discourse. He is one of the leading Catholic intellectuals who's written extensively on how to apply Catholic social teaching and natural law to public policy issues, speaking truth with love. Ryan has been in the news recently because his book, When Harry Became Sally, which covers the scientific, medical, philosophical, and legal aspects of transgender issues, was removed from Amazon. This deserves our attention and serves as a warning about the implications of this moment. We're honored to have Ryan here with us tonight to guide our conversation about the Equality Act and why it's so dangerous for people of faith and all Americans who treasure freedom. Ryan, we thank you for your extensive research and sacrifices that you've made to give us a language and a direction as we engage these questions and concerns. And we're eager to hear from you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sister, and thank you to all of the groups that have organized and sponsored tonight's event. It's wonderful that so many of you can be with us tonight, and you're really in for a treat. I didn't do the organizing here, so the credit goes to Sister Joy and the others at the various dioceses and archdioceses and Catholic conferences that have put this together. I just have the pleasure to get to listen to the kind of all-star cast of legal, philosophical, and theological experts who will be speaking to you tonight. What they've asked me to do is kind of give a 30,000-foot overview of the terrain and then introduce each of our speakers. So let me just say that the challenge for Catholics is that we have to hold simultaneously various truths in our mind as we think about public policy. And the most important truth is that each and every one of us is made in the image and likeness of God. We're subjects of profound dignity and intrinsic worth, and therefore all unjust discrimination is wrong. We're also created male and female are created for each other in marriage. And so simultaneously, we need to be able to affirm in law and public policy that everyone is made in God's image and likeness, and therefore unjust discrimination is wrong, but our bodily reality as male or female isn't discriminatory. And the truth about marriage isn't discriminatory. And so the problem with the Equality Act is not that we're in favor of unjust discrimination, it's that it's overly broad in that it doesn't define what sort of actions are truly discriminatory. What the Equality Act would do is it would make acting on a true anthropology, a true vision of the human person, in many circumstances, it would treat that as if it were unjust discrimination. And so the basic argument here is that if you get human nature wrong, if you get the nature of the human person, which John Paul II taught us was the most important question of the 20th century, was about human anthropology, the nature of the creature made in God's image and likeness, that if you get the anthropology wrong in law, it's then going to cause serious harms. And in the American tradition, this comes straight out of Martin Luther King Jr., where MLK is quoting Augustine and Aquinas in his letter from the Birmingham jail, where he says that for man-made law to be just, it needs to embody the natural law and the eternal law. What the Equality Act would do is it would take a just law, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned discrimination on the basis of race, and then it would add sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity everywhere where race is protected. It will expand the number of institutions that would now be classified legally as public accommodations, and it explicitly exempts itself from the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And it's important to point out that because the word sex isn't currently a protected class in Title II of the Civil Rights Act, which governs public accommodations, and it's not a protected class in Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which is a federal funding recipient, by adding sex, sexual orientation, and gender, those titles as protected classes, and then explicitly saying that RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, doesn't apply, the Equality Act would be affording people who believe that we are created male and female, and that male and female are created for each other, the same religious liberty protections as it does racists. All of the subsequent negative consequences follow from that. Right? If you get the nature of the human person wrong in law, then you're going to see the consequences for privacy and safety in single-sex facilities. You're going to see the consequences for equality and fairness when it comes to athletics. You're going to see the consequences for medicine when it comes to both gender dysphoria and abortion. If you get human nature wrong in law, there'll be negative consequences. And we'll have speakers this evening who will address each and every one of those points. The last thing I'll say from the 30,000 foot is that we should not be using people who suffer with gender dysphoria as political pawns. I think one of the most unfortunate things about the Equality Act and much of the political debate surrounding this is that it makes it seem like the only appropriate therapeutic medicinal response to gender dysphoria is what they call gender affirmation, puberty blocking drugs, cross-sex hormones, and then possibly surgery. People with gender dysphoria are not faking it. They didn't choose it. Imagine feeling so alien that you would contemplate taking high doses of the opposite sex's sex hormone. You would contemplate having surgery to remove various body parts. These people should have nothing but our sympathy and our compassion, and authentic compassion needs to be grounded in truth. And that's the problem here. If you create a civil rights law that will make good medicine the functional equivalent of discrimination. Thank God that we have not heard of a single case, for example, during COVID, of a hospital saying we won't give you a vaccine because you identify as LGBT. Right? If that were to happen, that would be unjust discrimination. And thank God it hasn't happened. The problem with the Equality Act is that it would take a good decision, for example, a Catholic hospital saying we don't perform elective mastectomies on high school girls who identify as boys, and it would treat that decision as if it were discriminatory.